Welcome to Trampled Underfoot's Christmas special, ladies and gentlemen.
Ho ho and ho.
Yeah, it's the year 19. Dude, I was gonna say 19 and something. It's the year 2019, and this only comes around once in a lifetime, folks. Because 2019, we won't see that go around the speedometer, or is it the which is yeah, we won't see that coming around until the next lifetime when it goes
Yeah,
back to zero and starts again.
actually, no, it'll never happen again unless we come up with a new calendar.
Well, the Mayans did something groovy there and created a. They had to chop a lot of heads and kick them like footballs, but
And even then, they only made it up to 2012. So,
no,
you know,
that's true. They only made it up to 2012. I mean, I guess they figured why keep counting? Nobody's gonna be alive around then, So
or maybe we missed the instruction to start over, like
right,
one of those perpetual calendars.
yeah.
It's going to be just, you're supposed to turn the blocks and flip them around, and okay, fine, now it's March 24th, 2019. Then you flip another block, now it's March 25th.
Well,
Maybe we didn't get that memo. We were supposed to go back to the third space and start rolling the dice again from there.
Well, all I gotta say about that is maybe they shouldn't have like chopped each other's heads off in sacrifice. I guess they were expecting by the end of like a few hundred years they'd end up with nobody left to care for. So they just have this like calendar in the middle of the forest with a bunch of dead, cadavers everywhere in the forests.
Yeah, and that brings up another interesting subject. I wonder, did anybody bother to flip over that Mayan calendar? Maybe the instructions were on the back.
And by the way, isn't it like society, no matter what time frame, that the leaders, because I suspect that those Mayan leaders, they took a boat on the coast and headed straight for like Paris or like who knows where in Europe, and they lived out the rest of their while all the town folk were like slaying and chopping and dicing. Wow, what a Christmas theme.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everyone. We went from Merry Christmas to Mayan calendars to human sacrifice within the first 2 minutes, 30 seconds of the podcast. We can go nowhere but up from here.
I'll start off on one thing and see what you have to say. I'll just throw something out and see what imagery you. So it's impossible for me to be detached. It's impossible for any of us to be detached from our vantage point in life and our experience in life. Impossible is not the word, but it's very comfortable to see things from our vantage point because it's naturally where we sit. When we were kids, the idea, and I just thought of this, of your parents coming to you, particularly in Western society, but however, and saying there's a guy, and not so many words, but just introducing you into the tradition of like Santa Claus, let's say, which, by the way, is totally missing the boat on what the darn season and holiday is actually for. But there is no argument on the part of a little kid. They're being introduced. It's like a blank canvas being introduced and filled with all these things. And that feeling when you were little, thinking there's somebody that's coming in. You didn't think about it. You didn't analyze it. You just said, somebody's coming to bring me toys. And that's all you. And my parents have like a direct communication. So I better, do things right. What do you think of that?
All civilizations have had something similar. And what it is it's the presentation of a reward for being good. Because it was presents if you're good, and it was a lump of coal in your stocking if you were bad, or something to that effect. There was always something negative if you were bad.
Yeah.
So it was that reward for doing the right thing and the admonishment for doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a thing. And we didn't take it as far as other cultures did. I mean, even Germany Have you heard of a character known as Krampus?
Sometimes I get a Krampus when I eat the wrong thing.
Krampus was the opposite of Santa Claus. He came along and he tortured all the bad kids. I
Oh,
mean, we're talking about beating them with chains, throwing them into fiery pits, and this, that, and the other. And it wasn't on any special day.
it could
was
be anytime.
any time. So, we didn't so much terrorize kids with Santa Claus as some of the Germans, and I say Germans, this goes back to way before there was ever a Germany. I mean, when you had, the Prussian state and the Bavarian state and the Hessian state and all that, way, way, way back. It started back with the Germanic tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they still do that or not, I really don't know. We heard a little bit about Krampus when we were stationed over there, but I had to ask somebody about it. What is this Krampus thing? And it was our landlord. She told us all about it. We were like, wow, how horrifying. She says, well, yeah, but now you know why the German people are so, strict about the rules and efficient, because nobody wants to get beaten with chains and thrown into a fiery pit.
That actually kind of makes sense. It built into the psychology. That does kind of make sense, although you're kind of tongue in cheek in a way. It kind of, because Santa Claus and Christmas does affect us. So in America, it's just for the audience, if you're arriving at us for the first time here, listening to us. So Mark Lindsay, he lives all the way on the other side of the continent. I call it the other side, but to him, it's the main side because it's where he's at, and that's Oregon. But to me, it's like that's the other side over there, like way over there. And I live over here on the actual East Coast, which I feel it's quite reasonable. This is like home base, right? In Miami. And we do this podcast every Tuesday. It's called Trampled Underfoot Podcast. And we have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And we tackle a lot of different subjects. And we just happen to be obviously talking about Christmas right now. And I just wanted to say to Mark that from Oregon to... And it's funny we could do that from Oregon to Miami. I'm sure there's variances in how we celebrate the holidays, but there's a generalized glue, just like Thanksgiving and whatnot. It's cross country with little maybe some people will like do like a nice pork roast, some people do ham, some people do turkey, some people do all sorts of stuff. But it's generalized, within the Santa Claus theme. Mm-hmm. But have you heard of the three wise men, countries that celebrate the three wise men?
I've not heard. Now, obviously, I know who the three kings were, as referenced in the story in the Bible. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that they were celebrated in some cultures as entities of themselves.
Yes, in Cuba, and I believe other Latin countries, I believe Spain does it too. I don't know about other, but they celebrate, and they're quite aware of Santa Claus and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's focused on. It's called Los Reyes Magos, the magical kings. So. Mm-hmm. The magical kings. So it's the three wise men, or the three, because in English we say the three wise men. Do we say the three kings?
That's up for debate. The Bible talks about three kings. It doesn't mention how wise they were, but I've heard it as wise men my entire life. Well,
that's exactly it. So there's more push towards that than to Father, although they do call him Papa Noel.
Okay, yeah. And I do know in a lot of countries in Europe, they call him Father Christmas.
Okay. Yeah. And in England, isn't it like I talked to Jimmy Page about it. We have a friend for you guys that he's British, right? And there's all sorts. It should be normal, but it's not. There's all sorts of weird stuff he says, and we're quite fascinated by the guy. And we're shocked that he speaks the language, by the way. But
that was for you, Jamie.
That was for Jay. That's a special gift. He told us about. So I've seen pictures, and his Santa Claus has twigs coming out of his head and stuff. Is that a fact? Because I've
That's
seen pictures like that.
Father Christmas. He wears a different outfit, and as a matter of fact, the image we see of Santa Claus with the red outfit with the fur, and he's kind of porky and has the red nose and this,
Yeah.
that, and the other. They refer to that as the Coca-Cola Santa because technically that's kind of where it came from.
We're so
over there. They dress in has a little bit different dress.
Yeah, we're totally market driven, aren't we?
Oh yeah, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was invented by Sears and Roebuck.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I had 99 interesting facts about Christmas, and that was like one of the first ones.
But it's true, So but you're absolutely right. We are market driven. It's part of being the capitalist economic powerhouse that we are. What can you say?
So, look, I do want to say that when I was young, and tell me what you say in your case, there was a special feeling, and yes, of course, the gifts was, that was an incentive and stuff, but the idea of things changing, tweaking, where there'd be different dishes throughout that season, and at least in Florida, I don't think the rest of where you were living at the time, Oregon or California, I don't know exactly whatever that moment you remember back to. Our weather it was very hot, just like it is nowadays. And then it cools off a little bit. And for a little kid, you sense that. And there's a very magical thing to it.
Well, we're a lot further north than you are, so it gets dark real early here. It's dark by 5 p.m. Sun sets between 4:30 and 5 p.m. And it gets the sun comes up a lot later, 7:30, something like that, because we are much further north than you are. It does get colder here, but for some reason, when you started talking about different meals and different foods and everything. And I don't know why, but here anyway, in the Pacific Northwest, citrus fruits are extremely popular in December. And I don't know. I don't know if that's because it was considered a summertime thing. So getting citrus in the dead of winter was considered something of value here.
Wow. That's cute.
But ever since I was a little kid, I mean, some of my very first memories, every Christmas stocking had an orange or a couple of tangerines in it. Wow. Because citrus was seen as something real special because it's just cold here. Now, there were always lots of nuts in the shell around too, because this is the time of year when you go gather them and the skins, like the hulls off the walnuts, have dried enough to where you can start cracking them open. And same thing with almonds and what have you. We grow a lot of hazelnuts here, so there's hazelnuts all over the place. But those two things came to mind when you started talking about that, and as a matter of fact, I bought a bag of tangerines the other day. The first tangerines I bought in 5 years, but for some reason, December rolled around and it's time for some tangerine.
That's incredible. See, that is a difference where I'm sure there's people that do it here, but they're all probably from Oregon. Because, that's so different than over here. We'd have the nuts. We'd have like a big centerpiece with the nut crackers sitting next to it, and it'd be full of different nuts, and people could just walk by and crack a few. And we also had it's more of a Spanish thing, but they're called turrón, and it's like we've talked about it before, but it's a hard candy with nuts, mixed in it, and some are egg yolk. It's like sweets, but in a, I guess, brick form. I can't. And
kind of like a fruitcake.
It's kind of like weird to try to explain it because I'm no expert on the subject, but those would be around, and people would cut with a knife or snap them, and you'd have it's like toffee. Some of them are, and others are like peanut brittle.
Okay.
And it's kind of like that kind of, for some reason that was traditional too, and eggnog as
Oh,
well.
eggnog. Yeah. Um, I've always liked eggnog, and I don't know why it's still considered to be just a Christmas thing. I mean, you can make eggnog all year long if you want.
It's special when it's right.
Yeah, I guess so, but I don't know. Just there's times all over the course of the year that say, you know what, I want a glass of eggnog. And we'll make some up.
Eggnog is good stuff, dude.
But there are certain spices. I asked my wife about this the other day because somebody. Okay, let me go way off on a small tangent and bring it right back. I go off on these YouTube rabbit holes,
Mm-hmm.
and I did about 6 months ago. I went through this. I found this website, this YouTube channel called the Try Channel, and it's Irish people try this. And usually it's American things. They try American snacks or American chips, or they'll try Pepperidge Farm cookies, or they try whatever. It's just stuff that they normally can't get in Ireland, just to see some differences. And everything that has cinnamon in it, to them, they relate to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm bringing this back now. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and I asked her what seasonings and spices does she associate with Christmas? And the first one out of her mouth was cinnamon. When I don't do that. I've never thought of cinnamon as being a Christmas spice. How about you?
No, now it's like you're right. I think of it in terms of a year-round thing for sweets or desserts, or like what you call what do you call that custard, like custard, they'll scrape a little bit over the custard here.
Oh, nutmeg, yeah.
No, they'll do cinnamon.
Oh, they will. Oh, okay.
Yeah, a little.
We always did nutmeg.
Or is it nutmeg? I'm not a cook, so I can't say. It's probably, I'm mixing up my spices.
Well, it might be. But see, that's one. Nutmeg and cloves are the two that make me think of Christmas. Those first two come to mind, and that's because you scrape a little bit of nutmeg, put a little bit of nutmeg on top of the eggnog. And so I've always associated nutmeg with Christmas just for that reason. And then cloves with, now there might be cinnamon included with the cloves, but cinnamon in and of itself, I've never really associated with Christmas. Cinnamon and cloves together, yes. But, and I can't think of anything else that I eat any other time of year that has cloves in it. I'm not a big fan of cloves. But,
so I wanted to share one memorable Christmas young that was very there's things that are ingrained in your head. I was speaking with someone before sometime this week, and we were sharing stories privately, and the person said, oh my, well, by the telling of those stories, that it was a wonderful thing, even though your folks aren't around anymore, but it was a wonderful way to lay the foundation for you, because there's people that have experienced pretty crappy, let's say, beginnings. And we were talking, and it made me think of memories from the past, as if I need any help. And I thought of the Christmas where I woke up and my mom pulled me out of bed. She said, come. And she says, look what Santa Claus left you. And I walked out past the hallway, past the bathroom, and out into the living room. And right underneath the chimney, we had a white marble chimney in Florida. So imagine, on the bottom, it was lined with Star Wars figurines in their action figures in their packaging. And I'm a little kid, and I just started looking at them and says, no. She says to me, no, look, turn around and look at the tree. And I turned around and looked at the tree, and the tree was full of Star Wars figurines as well under the tree. And, and I ran over to it and started picking them up and looking at it. She says, no, wait, come here. Look what Santa Claus left you in the bathroom. And I went towards the bathroom, and she had lined the tub with more, because I was totally into Star Wars with Star Wars figurines. It was such a memorable. She, it's one of those things that just the idea of bringing this type of happiness to a kid has, that love, that special, was a very memorable. The way she did that was a very memorable Christmas for me. Do you have anything?
And that is absolutely one of the coolest things about it too. Christmas, I mean, I don't know. A lot of the holidays to me are just another day, really. But mainly because we don't have kids of that age around anymore. I mean, my grandkids are my youngest granddaughter is 18.
Yeah.
My kids are grown and gone. My grandkids are grown and gone, basically. My youngest is asking me to help her look for an apartment, asking for my advice, which I'm fine with. But without that gearing it towards the kids, it's just not as fun anymore. And we allow it to become the pain we think that the holidays are, where, yeah, we got to go over to this person and we got to go over and visit that person. Well, yeah, but then again, you're getting together for a special event, but it's just not the same without little ones running around. That sense of wonder and surprise and awe like that. Now, as far as your question to me about mine, it was when I got exactly the bicycle I had asked for like my, oh wow, sixth birthday, or excuse me, sixth Christmas, when I was 6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah.
Like that. Exactly the bicycle I asked for. It was a Stingray type. I didn't exactly want the Apple Crate 5-speed, but something similar to that. And I found one at a store that was bright green metallic like that. It was made by Raleigh. And it had the nice banana seat on it, and it had the smaller front wheel, and it had the springy front end. And I just thought that was the coolest bike in the world, with the slick tire on the back.
Nice.
Treads. And I got that for Christmas, and that just absolutely blew me away. And I loved that bike until I broke it. But I was always rough on stuff like that, as we have documented several times.
But you enjoyed it, good, right? Wow.
Loved that, and that just jumped out in my brain about being the absolute greatest Christmas ever. My brother got he got the bicycle he wanted. I got the bike I wanted, and it was just a home Christmas. We were living down in California at the time. My grandparents were up here in Oregon, so it was just the four of us: my mom, my dad, me, and my brother. And I don't even remember what we did the rest of the day. I know we were in the house for most of it, because the Bay Area, California, it was raining. It wasn't snowing. So we couldn't really be outside all that much. We did in between rainstorms, but when the rain came back, we had to go in the house. And just for some reason, that's the Christmas I remember the most.
Amazing.
As a kid.
Do you ever, as an adult, you might be, we sort of circle the same themes, but I'm always eager to hear answers that might, be the same or different. But do you ever, either walking somewhere near a place that's familiar from the past, or totally not familiar, just in any random scenario or not random, and something brings you back to a moment that you can almost grab and recall physically, internally, mentally, and you're reminded instantaneously of a certain time in the past, but you can't quite hold on to it, and it's gone in a flick of a second. That special moment that it's just a feeling that you took a snapshot for some reason.
Every day,
Wow.
because you have to remember, I was born here and grew up here. And we moved to California, but I was back every summer for the entire summer, and then would go back down to California, go to school, come back and be up with one set of grandparents or another for the entire summer until I left this valley in 1982, January of 82. So I'm still shopping in the same grocery stores my parents shopped in when I was little. I'm still going to the same department stores. My wife had surgery in the same hospital some of my nieces and nephews were born in. So, and cousins. Um, so a lot of that is still here. And I'll walk into, for instance, we have a local sign shop here that I remember that place as a pizza joint and before that a burger joint. And I will walk in there and go, oh, wow, they still have that window there that goes back to that room. That was where you ordered or something like that. We were in a sandwich shop about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. No, it's been about a month ago now because it was before Linda had surgery. We were in a sandwich shop that I remember as a drive-up burger joint. And right next to it is a little convenience store that I remember being in when I was 3 or 4 years old. And
Amazing.
The names are the same. The people have changed. Maybe the stores have been moved around and remodeled a little bit, but not a lot. And like I said, this is a very small town. So, I was talking to one of the nurses at the hospital when Linda was there. And I told her, I says, it's funny because I still think of this hospital. I still refer to it as the new hospital because I remember when it was being built and it opened in 1966.
It's amazing.
So, yeah. So it's been there 50 years. So, it's 53 years old and I still think of it as the new hospital. It's weird like that,
I mean, so, I can tell you that, well, that's an incredible thing. I have similar experiences, although I've lived here. In my situation, I never left home, let's say, or my area, let's say. And things changed without me paying attention to them.
Right.
And then I'll return to a place. I'm like, whoa, what? And I'll look, and like, what the heck's going on here? It's totally different. I remember it as it was. A lot of people, and I'm in my 40s, right? Actually in the mid 40s. And Miami's always replenishing its blood.
Right.
So there's always fresh, people here. People move out. People obviously pass away. Whatever the case, there's always fresh. So oftentimes I find myself in a place and I'm like reliving, a memory and all the people around me. I'm literally at that point where I can say, and it's, I guess, a particular of this town or big cities, or I don't know. I don't even know how to think of it, but I do and look and say, my goodness, I can't be the only one that remembers this before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's not a lot of, I'm telling you, there's not a lot of people. A lot of people have left.
Yeah. Well, it's the same around here. I would say probably maybe a third of the people I went to high school with are still around. The rest of them have gone their separate ways, but we still keep getting an influx here. Now, there are a lot of people who were born here and live here who will never leave. It's sad to say it. I think my grandkids are in that category because it's real easy to isolate yourself here. You're surrounded by mountains, and it's almost like you have to go on an expedition to leave the valley.
Yeah.
You got to, especially this time of year, because all the passes, you have to go over 4,000 feet to get out of this valley. And the passes are not always, but pretty often they're snowed in. So unless you get out during the summer and go travel, the spring through autumn rather, and go travel, it's real easy to get isolated. And you think that this is the only thing in the world. When a trip to Portland or a trip to Sacramento will open your eyes quite a bit. You see, no, Medford, Oregon is not the end all and be all of everything. So,
there is something to be said about, look, I understand it too, frankly. There's something to be said about the continuity of, and security blanket of a particular, location that you've known. There's a comfort in it, but yeah.
There is a comfort in it. And, I jokingly tell people I'm so local, I'm related to myself because it's possible that it's true. I mean, the family's been here in this little area since the 1860s. So, with my grandkids, I had to give them a list of names. Don't date anybody with this name because you are related. Okay. That kind of thing.
You scared the heck out of them, didn't
Oh,
you?
yeah. Especially when my youngest granddaughter found out that her least favorite teacher, her least favorite science teacher in high school was a family cousin. No, not him. Yes, him. So, but
I have a little map on my so doing the DNA. I've been doing DNA, or what do you call family tree research, and then you could do a DNA test and you have matching people. And now Mark just said the possibility, watch out if he's got this last name, stay away because they might be well, there's a map that shows you people and whatnot. And in Miami, in Florida, there's quite a few, but there's people that I have no idea who they are, but I'm related to them. Well, maybe a little bit distant, but just the same, dotted across Miami.
sure.
And who knows how many times you come across. Maybe you walked in a department store and they're the person that forgot to, I don't know, give you your burger, or the fries were cold, and who knows who, or they cut you off at a street light, and that's your cousin,
Well, especially in this little microcosm of a valley, because there are, it's a small town. I keep saying it. There's only 200 and I think we're at the 211,000 people in this whole county.
Yeah.
So there are people in the county that are not living in this valley. So it's not a huge population. And if a family stays, just keeps regenerating in that same area for a while, pretty soon, the DNA does get around, is what I'm saying.
It's totally, look, it totally has to be. And I've been noticing that with my little research. Great Britain, dude, it's not 100% stamped, but people in that region, be it from the what you call England area, you could see it. They're quite the same people. They share. I mean, you could stretch it and say that they're pretty much related, but not really in the sense that they are. But it's kind of distant. It's not like, but they're kind of homogenous. And then you'll have the Scots, and they kind of have their thing, and there's a little bit of a blend in some of the, but like you'll see that. And it's an amazing thing. The smaller the area, people isolated, bam.
Yeah.
Watch out, boy, that's your cousin.
Yeah, that's right. It's not like you pull into the valley and you start hearing banjos, but you definitely know where you can get banjo strings.
Yeah. Well, I always thought it was those other people that sort of thing, and I started doing the research, which I've told Mark about. And back in the 1800s, in little rural areas and little enclaves of, there was names seemed to branch from one side of the tree to the other, crazy like, and it really was a shock to me.
Well, look back in, we're talking about around the time of the Holy Roman Empire, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little bit later. The Habsburgs married into so many royal families, they started marrying each other because they had to keep it with the royals. You couldn't have a royal marrying a commoner. And it got to the point to where the only people who were royals were Habsburgs. So
that's crazy.
And you don't even have to go that far back. You only have to look at Queen Victoria. Her was arguably the cause of the Russian Revolution. She was a carrier of hemophilia. And I want to say it was her daughter married the Russian Tsar. And their son had hemophilia, and that allowed Rasputin, basically, that paved the way for Rasputin to get cozy with the Russian royal family, and boom, next thing you know, off he goes. There goes the Russian Revolution. you
Crazy.
know. But they were marrying into so many different royal families that they were basically all intermarried with one another. So
Yeah, all of Europe had all the kings and queens of Europe and their offspring. That was how they form alliances and join powers. And
mhm.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. But the people, the stunning thing is that the people too, and maybe it was more a product of people just didn't move around as much, and
Yeah,
that's tongue in cheek in a way, or a mouth, a mouthful in a way to say, because at the same time, you did have travel, but I
right.
would suggest that it appears that the majority of people would stick to their little valleys
Hmm.
because they had to do the farming and whatever
Sure,
thing that they
sure.
had to do.
And this valley here is a microcosm of that. I mean, folks, a lot of folks do leave, but a lot of folks choose not to. The only place they've ever known, and they don't see any reason to leave or explore, and that's fine. Different strokes for different folks. But if you have no incentive to leave, you probably won't. And you're right about the advent of more convenient travel, because, for instance, you might have to think about it a little bit and make a couple of arrangements. For you to jump in your car and go to Fort Lauderdale wouldn't be that huge of an undertaking, whereas 100 years ago it would be enormous, because it wouldn't just be hop in the car and drive.
No.
you know I mean, for when folks, you got to, okay, put here on the West Coast time scale, the big immigration to the Oregon Territory came into Northern Oregon before the city of Portland was there. They basically made the city of Portland. That was in 1843. They didn't start settling in this valley that I live in until 1852, 9 years later. It took them 9 years to get down here and even start settling. You
Amazing.
know, they had ridden through on their way down south, but nobody ever really thought about staying here. And there were no established roads yet for, wagons or anything like that. In fact, some of the first peoples through here were building roads. They were looking for another way to get to Oregon besides the Columbia River. So travel was very arduous. It wasn't something that you thought about lightly. So even a trip of 10 miles might take a full day to do or more. So,
I saw the movie, I think for like maybe the third time. I haven't seen it much, but it's a classic and it's called Once Upon a Time in the West, which you've seen, yeah.
yeah, years ago. I haven't seen it in a long time, though.
And it's kind of like, you know, that where a man had bought land in the middle of nowhere and people thought him crazy and he had all his family there. And he had married a wife that lived in New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
which was New Orleans is one of the oldest, Louisiana territory, which the French had and then sold or gave to the Spanish, and then eventually became the purchase of the United States. And there's a long history of, well, she was like the big town lady, even though back then, if you think about it, it was probably like, well, it's as city as you could get, in comparison to nowadays. But she horsed or wagoned out west to meet her new husband, and he had bought territory or land in a very just wasteland area, and people in the nearby town thought that he was crazy. But
Right.
his deal was that he knew that the train would pass right by there, and he could sell the land or create a city of his own.
Mm.
And once it got there, and bad guys knew about it, and the whole movie revolves around that. Um, he had well water, and there was no other water in that valley,
Right.
and so that's how you can build a town, because you have water for one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the whole sort of thing about that movie, and I thought that it was just brilliant. And it starred what's this guy's name, the guy that did Wicked. What's the name of those movies? Death Wish. What's his
Oh,
name?
Charles Bronson.
Yeah, he starred in it. And it's just an excellent movie, but it shows that, people living, it wasn't an easy life. It must not have been.
No. It it was definitely not an easy time. So
I love that era for some reason. And I've recently read that the picture that's painted isn't and we know this. It's
Sure.
not, it's not, but I just love the idea, the cowboy, the Old West, wanted posters, towns in the middle of nowhere, people riding in after a long journey, trains, just gold rush, just the whole thing is it's such a wonderful, even though we have Hollywood to represent it,
Yeah.
but there's books and historical. It's just such a rich time of history because it was on the cuffs of basically what we experience, in my opinion, from the sort of non-internet era to the internet era. It was such, to me, we are people that, and more so for you, because you can go back to a time where you could remember where there was just right black and white TV
Oh
popularly.
yeah.
Not that there wasn't, but that it was not necessarily everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So,
Color TVs were rare. I mean, absolutely rare. And it's not so much. I mean, I'm sure that you can remember the same kind of a time.
I remember that we had black and white TV, and then Dad
Well,
bought color TV.
But
in the 80s.
Right, but TVs were big, heavy things. You couldn't mount one to a wall. It took two people to move them because they were so big and heavy.
Yeah.
One with a screen of any size. And if you had a 27-inch diagonal screen, that was a big TV back then.
You know what kids nowadays won't understand unless they had that experience? You could turn on the TV and there would be static on the screen, and you could run your hand by it and you'd feel the static. That was something that was uniquely, and you could, if you got close enough, you saw the pixels on it. I mean,
Yep. Do you remember a TV station going off at night?
Yes.
And
they
playing,
they
do this the Star Spangled Banner thing. Some of them had the little poem recited by John Wayne. Some of them had a similar one done by Red Skelton. And they had their little evening presentation. They did the Star Spangled Banner, and then you had a color pattern or a test pattern come up.
That was a beautiful thing,
and that was it. Then it would switch over to static.
Yeah,
and now thinking about TV stations signing off for the night, you wouldn't even think about anything like that. The not having the ability, especially in a town like mine where we had 2 TV stations and they both signed off midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. It varied because it depended upon if there was a movie after the news or not, because there wasn't always a movie. You would have Johnny Carson would come on, and then sometimes there would be a movie. More often than not, there wouldn't. And that was it. You were done.
Yeah.
There was no more TV. And there was no internet.
You just set my brain into
You just created your own fun. That's when you read a book, or that's when if you were still of the age where you had people over or what have you, you did other things. You played a board game or just whatever, threw rocks at one another,
that's another big thing that so to get to what I was saying, which I guess the example was made, but that's another thing with the advent of the internet, widespread as it is. I can't find a more useful tool that I appreciate more, because the internet, frankly, I'm not bashful to say, it's everything. I hate to say it, it's everything. We have it. The only thing that impedes me from discovering whatever I want to discover, for the most part, like 99%, is my search query on the keyboard.
Right.
And the objective for me to advance my knowledge of whatever it is that what are the combination of words to get to where I want to go.
And think about that for a minute, man. You're only limited by what you can think of. What should I search for? Sit down in front of a keyboard and go, what do I look for?
Which, by the way, if you ever visit a friend and all they have is like funny cat videos, you know the scope of their of
Yeah.
you know
No,
the scope.
but you know, it was very similar to me when I first got the internet, because we're talking about 1998 when we came back from Hawaii and settled in Nevada. And we got there, got my computer all set up, and I got online and I sat down. It works. And I went, okay, now what? I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know where to go. I had all this at my fingertips, which in 1998, let's face it, wasn't much. There was no Google. There was no YouTube.
Yeah.
It was, you had people making, oh my gosh, what was the name of that? You had people making GeoCities websites of their own. So you had Fran and Ollie's website and pictures that they had never updated, and you had to know the web address to get to Fran and Ollie's website. There wasn't a way to search for it. Then Yahoo came along, and that was a help. Netscape was there. That was a help. But if you really didn't know what you were looking for, you didn't really have any way of finding the place.
I want to add one bit to that springboarded, because that's a theme of ours. That's why I take, objection to, and it's easy to judge, but people of this era that weren't from that era, I don't know if they, not that they wouldn't, but I don't know if they would appreciate people prior to the internet, and computers started to become home, accessible, that you could purchase. Those people were just as much pioneers as the companies that produced them, because when they produced those computers and people started purchasing them and installing them in their homes, they were the ones that started to create applications that the founders of those, that equipment would not have thought of, and they adapted to it, and it created together solutions for problems as time went on, and led to so many things, online newspapers, and I mean, the map is wide. It's unending.
And it's still that way. I mean, I had this discussion. I'm sitting here nodding as you're talking, because I had this very same discussion with my grandson. Oh, a few years back. He was like 16 or 17 years old. And he said something to the effect about, I don't know what you guys did when you didn't have this, you didn't have that, you didn't have the other. I said, you're right. We didn't have this, we didn't have that, we didn't have the other. So we invented it.
Yeah.
It wasn't guys your age who invented the video games that you're watching. It was guys my age who developed the technology to allow that to happen. Now that he's 22, 23, it is guys his age, maybe younger, who are creating the video games. But they wouldn't have been able to do that without guys your age and my age inventing a way for them to get there.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't, I couldn't, well, I can remember a time before microwave ovens. Maybe you can't. But somebody my dad's age invented it and refined the technology enough to where they could sell it to the average guy on the street.
I remember us getting our first. It's a funny thing, because microwaves have been around, but not in our house.
Right.
And then eventually my dad bought a mic, and it was this big thing, and he put it in the kitchen, and like, I didn't know what it was, but you can cook things in it, and voila. But before that, Mom would bring home, and I remember this well, TV dinners, and they'd put the aluminum foil and the aluminum tray.
Yep.
Pop it in the oven, heat it up, and here she said, "Don't touch it yet. It's still too hot. You have to wait.
Too hot." Exactly.
Yeah.
People who talk about the McDonald's hot apple pie being the hottest substance on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
It is hot and it will remove several layers of skin. But if you think that's the hottest substance on the face of the earth, you have never tried to eat a Swanson's hot chicken pot pie straight out of the oven.
How about those brownies? Sometimes it would get so hot that it would bubble and melt.
Oh man, you pull a Swanson's, go down to what your favorite grocery and get a Swanson's chicken pot pie in the tinfoil little pie plate, put it in the oven and cook it according to the directions. And I mean, they will melt teeth. Forget about taking off skin. They will melt your teeth. They were so ding dong hot. You'd have to take it out of the oven and let it sit for half hour before you could touch it.
So I do take objection to the lack of, rear view sort of, look towards the past with people and considering them, because nowadays there's a lot of hype with, oh, those antiquated people, and that's something that happens throughout every generation. But um I am totally, I don't even have to say convinced, we are here because we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, going
Certainly.
back little by little.
Mhm.
And we owe it to them in the most literal sense of where we are now, for better or worse, because those little advances, one guy discovers that, oh, we're supposed to use this in this, I don't know, a thumb, what do you call those things that you put on your thumb so that you don't get poked with the
Oh,
needle?
a thimble? Yeah.
Thimble. It's just a simple example, everything,
Mhm.
hanging mittens on the oh, you need this type of hook, or just, I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm babbling, but the point is, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and
Right.
they were our forefathers in a collective way, mankind advancing, individually discovering things, and then it being incorporated in the general,
Mhm.
public consensus,
Right.
is the story, is our story, our human
Right.
story. So I don't, it's hard to look back and say, for me, oh, well, they, that's antiquated, and they don't, they thought this way and that way. But you can't think in those terms if you want to look at it honestly.
Well, I don't see the generation coming up looking at us that way any different than I looked at the generation before me, because I was that way with my folks. Yeah, your old way was great when you were a kid. We don't have to do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, your old way was fine, but we do it different now. Yeah, the rabbit ears were great, but we have cable TV now.
Mm.
You know, so I don't see it as I don't see them as any different than the way I was.
You know what? You're right, and the only reason I have this perspective is because of time. You're right. Because of time, I have this perspective. It's not like I came into my own with this perspective, because when you're a kid, you're like, our stuff is the best. You don't even get, it's a very selfish, it's a very youthful way of looking at the world. And it's funny for me to even say that, because I always considered myself the anti society and rebel and this and that. But
Mhm.
truth of the matter is that yeah, they had it right for their time.
Yeah, they did. They had it right for their time. We had it right for our time. And maybe what we're trying to project onto them is not right for their time. And I know that's the case in a lot of areas, maybe not all of them. And maybe I don't agree with some, and maybe I don't like some of them. But just as we set up the world we wanted to live in with our advances in technology, with our advances in our living space, where we want to live, how we want to live, the food we want to eat, the furniture we have in our house and our immediate surroundings, just as we set that up to please us, who's to say they're not doing the same thing? I don't think, however, that means everything that was done in the past was wrong. Yeah, there was a lot of things done wrong,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of injustices. There never was a perfect time. And anybody who says, "Oh, I'd love to go back and live in the 50s," no, you don't. No, you won't. You wouldn't want to go back and live in the 50s. Maybe you like the music, maybe you like the clothes, maybe you like some of the attitudes, but you wouldn't want to live there. Believe me, not knowing what you have now.
Yeah.
By the same token, that doesn't mean that everything that happened in the 50s was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I can see the little bit of a balance, but who am I to say that these people are wrong when I was saying the exact same thing about my folks who couldn't stand what they thought I was doing to their country. You know.
Well, yeah. So and notice this detail in the conversation, and this surprises me. Even though we have the internet, which again, to say it again, I think it's the most amazing tool that mankind has ever seen. And yes, I understand it. Even it sits on the shoulders of giants because you need electricity to have that, to get a computer to run, and you need all sorts of things. So I understand, but the culmination of all that, it surprises me that nowadays, with the ability to learn and discover and search out and put together information in whatever discipline you're interested in, the ability to grab that, how many people don't use it in a cerebral way and just use it as for whatever's important to them, and yet the world is, there's so much, like, I can't help but, like, maybe I'm wrong, because I can be dragged in. You said that you get the squirrel syndrome where you're off into a vortex.
Yeah.
But you're consuming information. If you could do
Not
that.
always.
Well, no, not all. Yeah. So, right. So sometimes it's silliness, right?
Of course.
Right.
What do I care about what some Irish people think about, nacho cheese Doritos? I really don't care. It's mindless entertainment.
Okay, but the balance. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. I don't suspect that if you have to put a percentage down on your time spent and let me just be careful, because maybe in fact you're completely consumed with it. But I would, if I had to, I would guess that you have a certain percentage of silliness videos that you entertain, and then you have another one of sheer exploration and knowledge that you entertain, and that balance is greater on the side of whatever you're into and exploring. However, maybe Mark Lindsay gets up and it's like cat video episode 537.
Actually, I've been watching a guy back in New Hampshire build a barn, but here lately, and another couple. Geez, I don't know where they're at, but they're remodeling a house. Anyway, there's my interest goes all over the place, but and here's another good example of what I'm talking about when I talk about generations looking down on other generations. You and I have both said it several times. Well, I don't watch a lot of TV. There's a stigma attached to people sitting around watching TV.
You're so right.
We kind of, I know I do anyway. I kind of have a bad impression about somebody who sits in a recliner or in a sofa all day with a cup of coffee and the remote in their hand watching TV.
It's so
that I don't have with somebody sitting in a computer chair upright with a cup of coffee watching YouTube videos from 8 till 4.
Because that guy on the internet, he's doing something, but that guy on the TV, he's not doing anything.
Cat videos and Korean girls try barbecue for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's, monkeys in Outer Mongolia or whatever. I mean, if you find monkeys in Outer Mongolia, leave them there, because that's not a good thing. But my point is that the guy sitting there in his chair might be watching National Geographic. He might be watching the DIY channel to learn how to build a retaining wall in his backyard. Just because it's on television doesn't mean it's bad. And just because it's on YouTube doesn't mean it's good. That's my point.
You're totally right about that. And there's a lot of people that are just in the TV thing, but you have to understand there's a lot of, and I think you do. There's because I'm sure you experienced it. There's people that just don't know, particularly the older generation. It's funny.
Mhm.
I have a neighbor. He is the same age that my father would be at this
Uh-huh.
time. He's the guy that walks his dogs and comes by and stuff.
Okay.
And one time I set up a computer in his house,
Mhm.
and he got the company to install the internet and the whole 9 yards. And I said that I'd help him, which I did. I sat him down. I explained the mouse. He would just sit in front of the computer,
Uh-huh.
and he'd look and he says, "So what do I do with this now?" I said, "You can search. Think of it like a library. You're walking into a library. The screen," I told him, is the entrance to it's your search, and you type in what you're looking for, what book, and it'll or information, and it will bring it up. But see, it's difficult for him to process that after like 70 something years of life with a screen that, okay, you type that, now what? Okay, I can't hold it in my hands, I can't open the book,
Right.
I can't turn pages, and this is not a unlearned man. He has knowledge, he reads, but he just can't. And the mouse, you have to move it around, and then there's the keyboard. I'm just, what is this? And he shut it all down. He didn't want it.
Yeah. I taught at that time, this was 8 years ago. So you do the math. At that time, he was 66 years old. I taught him how to use a computer. And the day he brought it home, he set it up on a desk. He had cleared off an area specifically for that. And he called me over. And he says, "Show me how to work this thing." I said, "Okay, fine. Take your mouse, and you want to move your mouse up." He lifted it up off the table.
Right.
He had, and it that kind of made me stop back up and regroup and think about all the stuff that I knew that I took for granted,
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
he
a lot.
didn't know. As a guy who was brand new to all this, he'd never seen anything like this before in his life.
Dude.
So I had to back up and get basic with him. Okay, you're left this right here on the front of your mouse. That's button on the left and a button on the right. This is what the left button does. This is what the right button does. This is what the left button does if you click it twice real fast. This is what it does if you click it once real slow or click it twice real slow.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Go all the way back.
We take it for granted.
Right. He had never seen anything like this before. So why would he know?
It's so true.
Uh-huh.
I mean, well, did he?
Oh yeah, he got a feel for it, and I helped him set up an email account, and he started emailing his kids, and he emails me still on occasion. He got more comfortable with it. I helped him with he got a cell phone that would take pictures, and he thought he was high speed, low drag. I showed him how to get his pictures off of the phone and into his computer, and how to edit them, and how to send them to friends, and this, that, and the other. And he but he was a crusty old curmudgeon to me
Right.
at the time. And this was, 8, 9, 10 years ago. He was a crusty old curmudgeon to me. I have become that crusty old curmudgeon with some other things. I mean, I'll put it to you this way. This is how crusty this guy was. His daughter found out he got a computer, and she said, "Oh, Dad, you have to get on Facebook." And that immediately said to him, "No, I'm not going to do it because my daughter says I have to."
Right.
As far as I know, he's still not on Facebook.
Right.
But it was because she said, "You have to." He said, "I'll show you. I'm not going to do it."
Right. Totally not the way to think about the whole process, but
Exactly.
but he was working it from his
Yeah. If she would have said something like, "Hey, Dad, have you ever heard of Facebook? I think you might like it." He'd have probably been open. "No, tell me about it. What does it do?" And, he came over to my house too, and I showed him what Facebook was and how I was using it back at the time, because I was new to it as well. We're talking 2010, 2011, and it was mainly to stay in communication with my kids. So, but introducing him to everything all at once. When you think about the first time you ever touched a PC or a Mac or anything, first time you ever sat down in front of a computer, up to what we're doing right now, everything that took you as many years as it took you to learn that, he was trying to learn that all at once.
Yeah.
At 66 years of age. So once he got comfortable with actually using it and learning how to navigate it, then he couldn't get enough. He wanted to do more and wanted to explore more. And like, he was much like your friend who said, "Now what do I do?" He was the same way. I said, "Well, what do you want to do? Is there something you've ever wanted to explore or look up?"
And just that
Well,
idea,
yeah. I
uh,
says,
that question posed
Mhm,
to a human being
mhm,
is such, to hear that for the first time or to
mhm.
understand that, we take it for granted. I totally take it for granted. Like, we could be talking
Yeah.
about this, but like, it's attached to me, like the whole
Mhm.
process. But that's an important question. What do you want to search?
Well, I don't know if you ever did it or not, but to me, one of the things I used to do to entertain myself when, the radio was boring or there was nothing on TV is I would grab a volume of the encyclopedia and go in and read it
I'd open it
and
up to any
check out
page.
things. Yeah. And just check stuff out. Now, kids don't know what an encyclopedia is now. It was kind of like, imagine a dictionary that just doesn't know when to quit, because you would look up the word volcano in the dictionary and it, be about like this. You open up volcano in the encyclopedia, it would not only tell you what it was, it would tell you where they are, the different kinds, and it could go on for pages. And it was stuff like that was cool to me. So that's how I related it to him. I says, think of this as the world's largest encyclopedia. Any subject you want to know about. Let's say you want to look for model trains. So I told him, type it into your Google search bar and just type in model trains. And he did. And he saw all these results pop up. And I said, see, you can not only look for things about model trains, you can look for things on specific model trains. If you have a particular brand of chainsaw, you can look it up and see if they have a manual for it online. Or if you're thinking about buying a particular tool, you can look it up and see what other people think of it. Is it worth it? Is it good? Is it bad? That's when he started getting hungry and he started seeing the value. Well, I want to look up my swamp cooler. I said, go for it. And we tried. There was nothing about it. But then I found out he wanted to look up the motor. So he looked up the motor and he found a manual for his motor. And he was a happy guy from there. He thought that that was the coolest thing in the world. He said, yeah, but now that I've downloaded this, I have to print it, don't I? I said, nope, you don't have to print it.
You could go back.
You've saved it right there in that folder. You can go back and open that manual anytime now. You own it. It's yours. This is really cool. That kind of thing. So the stuff that I was taking for granted, even though I started this off by saying Christmas with that discovery for kids was kind of missing.
Yeah.
Maybe that is kind of ageless because it was that same sense of discovery in a 66-year-old man that kind of made me feel good, made me feel kind of fun. It was great.
So to tail off this episode, I'll throw out a couple, if you'd like,
Sure.
interesting Christmas facts and see what you think. I
Okay.
probably know them already because you shot off the first one.
Well, I may know one or two, but we'll see. But I won't ruin it for everybody else.
Okay, so here's the first one. The image of Santa Claus flying in his sleigh began in 1819 and was created by Washington Irving, the same author who dreamt up the Headless Horseman.
Yep. Washington Irving. Yep.
Irving.
Yep.
Here's another one. The Montgomery Ward department store created Rudolph the reindeer as a marketing gimmick to encourage children to buy their Christmas coloring books.
See, now I thought it was Sears, so I was wrong on that one. I thought it was Sears and Roebuck. Now, okay, Montgomery Ward. Okay.
Now, the original Rudolph did not have a red nose. In that day and age, red noses were seen as an indicator of
drunkenness.
Exactly. And Montgomery Ward did not want him to look like a drunkard. So so he didn't have a red nose in that scenario. Here's another one.
In fact, they called that bright red nose a gin blossom because it blossomed and bloomed after you've had too much gin.
Let's see here. Okay, some leave food out for Santa Claus, his reindeers. as Norse children did, leaving hay and treats for Odin's 8-legged horse. I can't even pronounce that, but it's Selifuri, Sleipnir. Good luck pronouncing that. Hoping they would stop by during their hunting adventures. And Dutch children adopted this same tradition, leaving food in their wooden shoes for St. Nicholas's horse.
Okay.
So that's pretty interesting.
You see, I never left anything for the reindeer, but always left cookies out.
I did too. A couple of times. My mom thought it was such a waste to leave the milk and the cookies, but she would put it out. I'd fall asleep. She'd promptly pick it up and put it back.
You know what's funny about that is we never left milk out because my dad was always, he knows where the fridge is. And I'm like, well, but he would know where the cookies are too. Yeah, but what you're doing is you're letting him know it's okay to have some cookies.
Yeah,
well, let's let him know. Then let's let him know it's okay to have some milk too. No, you don't want it to go bad.
That is hilarious. He says, my kids are going to ruin the milk. That is so funny, dude. That's a good one.
I was that kid, man. I mean,
Okay, America's first batch of eggnog was made in the Jamestown settlement in 1607. Yep. Its name comes from the word grog, meaning any drink made with rum. Non-alcoholic eggnog is popular as well.
Yep, that's actually kind of fairly new, the non-alcoholic, because before that, eggnog was seen as an adult beverage.
Yeah,
because it was made with rum.
That's what my mom would make a big bowl of the stuff, and people would just scoop it up and stuff, and there'd be rum in it, and I was only allowed to have like a little taste of it. And I was like, it was so sweet, but nope, just a little taste. Let's see here. I haven't read through these, but I'll just read this. In 1914, during World War I, there was a now famous Christmas truce in the trenches, which we know of.
Right.
Between the British and the Germans. They exchanged gifts across a neutral no man's land, playing football together, and decorated their shelters. And so they say, read more about it in the book Silent Night, the story of the World War I Christmas truce. That's an amazing thing. Just the concept of that is mind-blowing, actually.
Yeah, and it is 100% true story. And from what I gather, several people on both sides got in serious, serious trouble for it. But none of them regretted it.
I mean,
folks lost their commands and ruined their careers over it. But, some things are just worth that.
If you think about it, if you're there to destroy the enemy or make them surrender or whatever the heck, because you're not there to play games or this or that, and they did that, it just shows what it was is the injection of humanity. What are we doing for a little moment? And because it's the idea of duty, and then just the human. You look at a person and you're like, well, for goodness sakes, the whole concept. I think you're right. It was a very powerful moment in history.
It was extremely powerful. It was just two groups on opposing sides saying, not today. Not today.
Amazing.
We're mortal enemies and we're willing to kill one another, but not today.
Amazing, dude. But, it also brings up the issue of that they're not that dissimilar. Because if they can come to that, exactly, if they can come to that conclusion, barring any psychopathic people amongst them, but just the idea, it's a powerful moment. I'm glad that we touched on that one. And I'll do one more. Let's see. I hope we end with one more. I haven't read them. Let's see.
If not, we can take care of it in the edit.
Oh, that's true.
So
yeah, Denny's restaurants in the U.S. were originally designed to be perpetually open. Their buildings were built without locks. This became a problem when they decided in 988. What is 988? I don't know why must have
Yeah.
to close on Christmas Day for the first time.
Yep.
Maybe 1988, and they
Yeah.
missed one.
Yeah. Somebody typo, because I don't think they've been around for that long.
Almost 28 sets of Legos are sold every second during Christmas season.
And half of them to my youngest grandson,
Oh, yeah?
who's a Lego monster.
So, yeah, folks, we'd like to wish you guys a very happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and Festivus for the rest of us.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Yeah. So, yeah, check us out every Tuesday right here. We have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And
you can go over there, check it out, check out some past episodes. Here are a few episodes that Eloy is always bringing up. I recommend episode 11. And what would it be? Episode 69 was a pretty good one, too.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give away anything about them, but episode 11 and 69 both stand out in my brain. And not for any nefarious reason, just entertaining stories. Trampled Underfoot podcast is sponsored by Harneal Media. Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media does an excellent job keeping us all in line, keeping us online. And if you have any website questions, he's the man for you. harnealmedia.com. There is a link in our description box down below here on YouTube to Steve's website. Check him out. He does an excellent job for us. Also, check us out over on Facebook. Trampled Underfoot podcast on Facebook. We post supplementary information over there. Occasionally, if somebody mentions a video or mentions a picture, we'll post it over there. Or if somebody just finds something kind of funny, like Ozzy Osbourne in a pair of plaid golf pants, we'll post it over there as well. So hit us up on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot podcast.
And by the way, I'd watch that Ozzy in a plaid golfing suit, you said?
Yeah. It was just a photograph I saw and thought it was funny. Ozzy Osbourne in plaid golf pants. And that was the day Black Sabbath said, no, we got to get you some leather.
So have a great year, folks. And we will have a New Year's episode next week. So thanks for spending time with us throughout the year. We'll catch you next time, and let's see what adventures we, trip into.
Exactly. Have a Merry Christmas, y'all. Thank you.